This is Unexpected with Hannah Love. In this podcast, you will gain a new perspective of how God loves you enough to call you to things that you couldn't have imagined for yourself. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I am doing a special episode, I guess, this week, and it is postpartum. So this is just your disclaimer for any men who are listening. There are probably few, but if you are, this is for the women. Maybe your wife is expecting and you just want to know some things. Great, that's great. But just again, disclaimer: this stuff is going to be for the girls, whether it be trying to get pregnant or you are pregnant or you want to know what to expect when you're pregnant, or if you have had babies and thinking about other babies, or just want some postpartum tips. And to be honest with you, I might even do like a big product review, because when you've had 4 kids, you kind of know you've tried a lot of things. So I can tell you from experience what has worked for me, what hasn't worked for me, to each their own, but I can tell you from experience what I think about certain things. So with that being said, here we go. I guess I'm going to do this episode in the order of pregnancy first. I had a lot of questions about why I had C-sections. And so I think last week I posted a short on YouTube and on Instagram about my experience with all 3 boys and my C-sections. I have now had my 4th, and we will cover that a little bit today. I have had C-sections for all of them. The first time was necessary, and after that, they encourage you to have it again. And actually, Abram was born 3 weeks early, so that was necessary for him as well because he had growth restrictions. So here we go. We're going to jump in. My personal experience with pregnancies, just because I feel like I haven't talked about this. And the most relatable thing in my life right now is going through, if I'm honest, Instagram and Reels and seeing other women talking about breastfeeding, seeing women talking about multiple children under a certain age, and just living in the mom bubble. And truly, it makes you feel like you're not alone and you have community. And that's really the whole point of what I'm doing today. It's not biblically heavy. I'm probably not going to give a whole lot of theological wisdom here, but I do want to encourage women and remind them that they're not alone, that there are other women out there, that they have experienced certain things like postpartum depression, and just give a little encouragement in that area. And I will say, of all the 7 mountains of influence that I have talked about in years past, the mountain of family, I think, is a pillar. I think it's one of the pillars. Children are a blessing. They're an inheritance from the Lord. And I think the greatest ministry we could ever be called to starts in the home. I think it starts with the children that we raise, the generations that we're bringing up to know truth, to know God, to know whose they are, what their identity is. But you know what? That all comes with a little bit of practical information. And so that's this episode. We're going to get into the practicals. Pregnancy. I love the movie What to Expect When Expecting. Is that what it's called? What to Expect? Sorry, I'm talking to Livy back here. You know the one with Cameron Diaz? And
What, I'm going to look it up.
You can look it up.
What did you say it was?
I think it's called What to Expect.
To
And
when you're expecting.
When you're expecting, yes. It's got Cameron Diaz in it. I guess it's an older movie now because I'm old. Doesn't feel that old, but 13 years ago. So just a summary of the movie is these 4 different women, all different stages of life, all different types of, relationships, and they all have very different pregnancy experience. And it's a comedy, but it's pretty accurate because you can go online, read the forums, you can type in literally any weird pregnancy related question, and you will find, I kid you not, a forum page for it. It'll be like, hey, asking this, is this too weird? And then without question, there will be thousands of women that are like, oh no, me too. So love that movie for that reason. I even felt like I related to one of the moms because she barely contracts, doesn't really have contractions, sneezes, and has the baby. Well, it wasn't that easy for me, but I never felt my contractions for like days. Didn't even know I was contracting, even on Pitocin. And if you missed that, go back and listen to my story on Instagram, on YouTube about all of my C-sections. So I was not the norm in that my water never broke and my contractions never hit hard. I didn't even know I was contracting. But back to square one, I guess. Pregnancy. We were just talking about this morning, a couple of my girlfriends, and it was just how some women will be like, I love pregnancy. And I will never, ever be one that doesn't. Like, I think pregnancy is a blessing. I think it's an honor. I think it's a privilege to carry life. It is like, wow, it is a privilege. But it's hard. At least for me, my experience was super sick. I never threw up, but I have several girlfriends who threw up all day, every day, their entire pregnancy. I can't imagine because that's crippling. I did end up taking Bongesta, and I know that there's other like variations of pills that you can take for your morning sickness. However, it does make you sleepy. So you like take it at night and it just knocks you out. And basically, I just wanted to sleep through my whole first trimester because it's like a hangover 24 hours a day for the first 12 weeks. However, I would count down because I knew that once I hit 12 to 14 weeks, I'd be in the clear and I would be a new woman. Okay. So first trimester, rough. And we've had all of our babies in the winter. So I have been first trimester pregnant in spring and early summer, every single pregnancy. So it's a double-sided coin because I'm not like super sick and hot and like, can't go to the pool, but then I'll also not like heavily pregnant and too hot in the summer to go to the pool. At least second trimester hits, I've got a little bit of a bump coming out. The bumps get bigger with every baby quicker. Your body just knows what to do. And you could technically go lay by the pool, but when you have other children, there is no laying around by the pool. So that was my experience with first trimester, second trimester. I love your energy comes back. Food aversions die down a little bit. It is sad because for me, I could not handle even the smell of coffee, and I need coffee. Okay, you don't have multiple kids and not like function during the day without coffee. I couldn't even bear the thought of it, and I would always switch over to iced. And sometimes I would just switch over fully to matcha because couldn't handle the smell, couldn't handle the taste of it. And still, I'm like easing my way back in. Every pregnancy, I have to ease my way back into coffee because I just can't handle it. I can taste water. Like everything is heightened. Your smell is heightened. There's so many things that people don't talk about and you don't know about until you're pregnant and you're Googling it. And that's another reason I was like, why don't people talk about so many of these things? We'll get into some fun stuff post-baby and breastfeeding that people don't talk about because my mind was blown after having my first baby. I was like, I've never heard of this. And apparently common knowledge in the mom community, but like if you're not living in that world, you don't have a clue. And I just wanted to bring you a little bit of motherly like info, I guess. Liv, do you have any questions? I've got Liv here, and
So many questions.
she hasn't journeyed into motherhood yet, but she's on the brink. And so I really love to. I was also the first in my friend group to have a baby. And so I felt like when the years came where my friends started to have children, I was like, let me know. Text me your questions. I will tell you if it's normal or like at least if I experienced it. And across the board, I think every question I've ever got was like, yep. People don't tell you, but yes.
Do you have any at the top of your head that you're like, I can't believe that happened?
At the top of my head, I mean, it is staggering how tired you get in your first trimester. Before I knew I was pregnant with Asher, I remember being at work, sitting at my desk, and I would fall asleep, sitting up at my computer at work and just fall asleep. And I was like, wow, I'm tired. And I had no idea. That's just part of it. You could fall asleep at the drop of a hat. So that was new to me. I tried all the things for nausea. I tried C-bands. Have you ever heard of C-bands? Okay. Tried those, tried peppermints, tried ginger. I hate ginger. I tried it all. Nothing worked until I got Bongesta. And, God bless the people that have really easy pregnancies with no queasiness because you really just count down the days until you can get off the couch. But like I said, second trimester is glorious. All the energy's back. You can eat things again. And then we enter third trimester and things get a little harder. My first three, I don't remember being super miserable. I was always really active. I walked with all of them, except maybe this last baby, I didn't walk so much. Abram, I think I walked him out because I walked 40 miles a week, 40 miles every week. I had my Fitbit. I was religious about it. I did, and then he came 3 weeks early, and they were like, he stopped growing. And I'm like, oh no, I think maybe I walked too much. That's not scientific. That's just me in the back of my mind because moms blame themselves for things.
I got some questions if you can't think of any.
Yeah, hit me with some questions because I'm just freeballing.
Pregnancy or motherhood?
Start with pregnancy and we'll ease into motherhood. So the question I've been asked is, why do you feel emotionally disconnected during pregnancy? So is that from your spouse? Disconnected from the baby?
Says not everyone feels an instant bond. Is that okay?
Gotcha. An instant bond when you first find out you're pregnant. I personally think that that's normal, at least with your first. I think because it's so foreign, in my opinion, it's so foreign because you've never had a baby before, you've never been pregnant, you've never carried life, and so it's kind of surreal. And so you're kind of walking around being like, until I have a belly poking out, is this real? And especially if you're not feeling sick or like a lot of symptoms, then you might just be like, I don't feel any different. Like, is there really a little person in there? And they say that dads don't feel like dads until they hold their baby for the first time. That's a saying. And that moms feel like moms as soon as they find out. But again, I think with your first, because it is so new, I didn't experience an instant like, oh, me and my baby are one and we're bonding. And because we were like, we don't even know the gender yet. We don't have a name. Who is this little person? So yeah, I'm sure that there's a range that people can experience. But for me, with my second, third, and fourth, it was like, hey, buddy, or, hey, baby. And you're just like talking to him because you've done it and you just know, like, you've had life, you've carried life before. And so instantly you're just like protective and not that I wasn't protective the first time.
Is it normal to grieve pre-baby life while still being excited?
100%. I think that there are so many emotions attached, especially according to whatever your circumstance is. Asher was a surprise. So there was a lot of shock mixed in and a lot of, I don't want to say fear, but it was very much like we didn't feel ready yet, but we had to get there. And so there were a lot of emotions that came with life is never going to be the same. And you do. I think there probably is this grieving process. And I've read a lot of posts from a lot of mothers who talk about life before children. My favorite thing that I say to people that I think is an encouragement is, once you have a child, you and your husband will look back at your life and be like, what were we doing? Literally, like, what were we even doing with our life before this little person entered our world? And that's unimaginable when you have like a fun marriage and a fun husband and you get to do all these exciting experiences with. I think when you're in that space, you're like, how could it get any better? But I'm not kidding. Once you have a baby, if you're doing it right, all that goes out the window and you're like, life starts. Like, life started. The best part of life started when we started having a family, because I don't know, it's just like all of your love rolled into one little person that like is the culmination of you and the other person that you love. So that was a very long answer.
That was a good answer.
But I think that I think that's totally normal. I think fear and grieving and like the unknown, fear of the unknown, that's totally, totally normal. But once you get on the other side, I also feel like you're like, whoa, like this is living.
How do you deal with unsolicited advice and judgment from others?
To be honest with you, I think a gift that comes with motherhood is when you have a child, for some reason, other people's opinions, like, go out the window. You're kind of like, I don't really care what you say. Like, there's just this confidence. I don't even know. There's an assuredness. Like, all of a sudden, man's opinion, the world's opinion kind of means nothing to you because you're like, I don't care. I have more important things to deal with. I have more important things in my life, like taking care of this baby. It can hurt coming from people that you're close to or you love or who have good intentions. And I think that's probably super common. I was fortunate because I have an amazing mama and amazing mother-in-law. And so most of the advice I got was from them. I also have a lot of women in the family. Again, I was the first to have a baby in my friend group. So I didn't have a lot of girls my age that could like pour into me or like be a village, which was really hard. But I had good advice. And then I also think with each pregnancy, you kind of learn to take things with a grain of salt and you figure out what works for you, what works for your baby, what works for your marriage. Because no marriage is going to be exactly the same. No baby will be exactly the same. No pregnancy, like it's all going to have its degrees of differences. So you just figure out what works for you and yeah, you just kind of let the rest of it roll off your back.
This is a question because your first pregnancy, like your family lives far.
Mm-hmm.
What is some advice or words of encouragement you would give to a mom to be that doesn't have a village or the support nearby?
I think it's probably way more common now than it ever has been because technology is so great that people can travel and people can work from anywhere. And yeah, I just think that it used to be way more of a thing for you to live around your family and stay within your community. But our generation, I feel like we've been movers, and the technology has made that like more available to us. And so I felt super alone in it, but like the older I get, the more I see that our whole generation is one of women who are like, oh yeah, I don't have family in town either, or my family's from this state. So I have a lot of empathy for them because I've lived that. We are here. We do not have family. We do have help. Thank goodness. We have the best nanny. And I don't even like to call her a nanny because she's just like part of the family. At this point, we've grafted her in. She doesn't have a choice. She's one of us. Actually, she's married. So her husband is also like by default. So Luke, Stu, y'all are like grafted in. You're Moonies now. She's got the baby back here. We couldn't do it without Stu. She is my village. The first few years, however, I didn't have anyone the first year. I didn't have anyone second year, and it wasn't until we had Ames the third year that we decided we probably needed help with Shay on the road. And I know I needed help before that, but just the advice that I have is maybe get out there and find you a group within church. Find you like a community group. Find you, I don't even know what they call them, but I know that most churches have small groups, right? So find you a handful. It doesn't need to be this big, great like group of things and people. Just find you a handful, even like two good women, two moms, two like married couples that you and her husband like have the same values and you could see doing life with this couple. Find that and then build off of that, because what you have to consider is the people, the community that you're building your life around is who your children are going to grow up around. And you also want to consider that the people that your friends are and the way that they parent is going to directly impact your kid if they're spending any amount of time with those people and their children, right? So be mindful of who you're doing life with, and make sure that the values line up. That listen, if God is your number one, then you better make sure those people in your life have the same values. They don't just talk it, but they walk it. So that would be probably my number one advice, is get in a small group, find you a community some way. I know Facebook groups are big. Back in the day, they had an app called Peanut. I think, that connected moms like in areas. And that's really sweet. I don't know if that's still a thing, but that is like, that was the number one challenge for me. I didn't have a community. It's taken me, I've lived here almost 10 years, and it's taken me the last 3 to finally, and I started that because I saw a need for a Bible study group. And so that ended up being what happened for me. And now I have like the most solid group of women that I can text at any given moment and be like, please pray, or please do this. And we don't necessarily do life together, but they're praying, and we meet a couple of times a month, and we know the low lows for each other, and we support each other so that we can go out and be better moms, better wives. Honestly, in the first few years, when you just have littles, you live in a bubble. Shay and I say it all the time. We live in a bubble. We don't have a social life outside of home, and maybe you do need to grieve it. I think Shay probably needed to grieve that. I didn't. I'm more introverted. I definitely needed friendship and support, but I didn't need the social aspect. So get to know your neighbors. Honestly, we have wonderful neighbors, and I mean, I had someone just bring by some sourdough bread last night and leave it on the porch. And another neighbor that came over this week to help me put Abram to bed because I can't pick him up yet after my C-section. Find your neighbors, invest in them, love the people well around you, and hopefully that will be reciprocated. I've had a few, our first year we had, I don't know if I've ever told you this story, Livy, but our first few years in our first neighborhood with Asher, our neighbors were not so helpful. And so that can be hard too, but you will find your people. Pray that God brings his people into your life, and then ask him to open the right doors and close the wrong ones. That's a pretty big prayer that I prayed for many years, and I've seen God do it. He'll open the right doors to friendships, and he'll close the ones that you don't need. So just be obedient to his voice in choosing who you're walking with. So because we are talking about so many things today, I'm going to chop this up. We're going to do a 2-part because I can get long-winded and really talk. I can get in the weeds about motherhood. You don't have 4 kids and not get in the weeds. So this is going to be a 2-part, and we will do more of motherhood and then like pregnancy, if you will. So we've got a little bit of something for everyone. And again, a disclaimer that this is for the girls. This one's for the girls. I need Shay in here. Shay's not home right now. I'd have him come and sing that. Meet us back here next week for part 2.
Thank you so much for listening today. If this episode has encouraged you, please feel free to share the show with your family and friends. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world today, and my hope is that this show is a candle in the dark.